The heart was still beating, warm, pulsing, and unmistakably human, found embedded within the turbine blades of a Boeing 747 that had been grounded for maintenance. Aviation engineer Marcus Reeves, with 27 years of experience dismantling aircraft engines, dropped his tools and stumbled backward, his face drained of color. What he discovered inside that engine housing on November 12, 2023, defies all logical explanation and has since been classified by the Federal Aviation Administration as mechanically impossible. "I've stripped down hundreds of engines in my career," Reeves later testified, "but nothing prepares you for finding human tissue that's somehow still alive, fused with aviation-grade titanium." The aircraft in question, a commercial airliner registered as November 647 Whiskey Tango, had been in service for 11 years without incident. During a routine D-check inspection, the most comprehensive maintenance procedure an aircraft undergoes approximately every 6 years, mechanics noticed unusual vibrations coming from the number 3 engine even when completely powered down. When technicians placed their hands on the cold metal housing, they reported feeling what one described as a rhythmic thumping, like something inside was trying to escape. Initially, they suspected a loose component, or perhaps a small animal that had somehow become trapped within the machinery. What they discovered instead would send shockwaves through the aviation community and beyond. When Reeves finally opened the core of the Rolls-Royce RB211 turbofan engine, he immediately noticed an abnormal dark red mass entangled within the high-pressure compressor blades. The object appeared organic, approximately the size of a man's fist, and was connected to the surrounding metal components by thin, vein-like structures that had somehow grown into the engine's titanium parts. But the truly horrifying discovery came moments later, when Reeves realized the mass was pulsating. "It was beating," he whispered during his interview. 67 beats per minute. We timed it. A perfect human rhythm. 2 other mechanics witnessed the discovery. One immediately vomited on the hangar floor. The other, a devout Catholic, began reciting prayers while backing away from the engine. Security camera footage from the maintenance bay shows all 3 men eventually retreating from the aircraft, visibly shaken. Within hours, the hangar was sealed off by authorities. What happened next remains heavily redacted in official reports, but through interviews with maintenance personnel and flight crew members who were present that day, we've been able to piece together a disturbing timeline of events. The aircraft had last flown 3 days earlier, operating a routine passenger flight from Singapore to Sydney without any reported incidents. The captain for that flight, 43-year-old Adrian Mercer, had been flying for the airline for 15 years. His co-pilot was 36-year-old Sarah Chen, with 8 years of experience. Both pilots had clean records and were described by colleagues as consummate professionals. Yet when investigators began examining the flight data and crew manifests, they discovered something chilling. Captain Mercer had never checked out of the Sydney airport after landing. Security cameras showed him walking toward the crew exit, but he never appeared on any of the cameras covering the building's exits. His hotel room remained untouched. His luggage was found in the crew locker room. Adrian Mercer had seemingly vanished into thin air. More disturbing still was what DNA testing would later confirm. The beating heart found embedded in the engine belonged to the missing pilot. How does a man's heart end up inside a sealed aircraft engine while it's still biologically active? Asked FAA investigator Catherine Doyle. It's not just improbable, it should be impossible. The laws of physics alone make this case baffling. For human tissue to become embedded within an aircraft engine, it would typically require the engine to be running, creating the suction and force necessary to pull in foreign objects. But Captain Mercer had last been seen long after the aircraft had been powered down and secured. Furthermore, for any organic material to survive the extreme temperatures of a jet engine, which can exceed 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit during operation, is inconceivable. Yet, there it was. Beating. The medical examination of the heart raised even more questions. The tissue showed no signs of trauma or burning that would be expected if it had been violently pulled into a running engine. Instead, it appeared to have somehow grown into the machinery, with small capillary-like structures extending from the cardiac muscle and fusing with the metal components. These structures were neither fully organic nor mechanical, but seemed to exist in some impossible state between the two. It's as if the heart adapted itself to survive within the engine environment, said Dr. Eleanor Frost, the pathologist who examined the tissue. I've never seen anything like it in 34 years of forensic medicine. The cellular structure has been altered in ways that shouldn't be biologically possible. When questioned about how long the heart had been inside the engine, Dr. Frost's answer was perhaps the most disturbing detail of all. Based on the tissue integration with the surrounding components, I would estimate several weeks at minimum. But Captain Mercer had been seen alive and well just 3 days earlier. Something wasn't adding up. Investigators began interviewing everyone who had contact with the aircraft or Captain Mercer in the days before his disappearance. Flight attendant Melissa Park remembered something unusual during the descent into Sydney. Captain Mercer went to check something in the cabin during our final approach, she recalled. That's not standard procedure. Pilots typically remain in the cockpit during this phase of flight. When he returned to the cockpit, he seemed different, very pale. He kept touching his chest and complaining about a burning sensation. Co-pilot Chen confirmed this account, adding that Mercer had insisted on performing the post-flight checks alone, another break from standard operating procedure. He practically pushed me out of the cockpit, Chen stated, said he needed to check something with the engines and would handle the shutdown procedures himself. Chen was the last person confirmed to have seen Mercer alive. The investigation took an even stranger turn when technicians attempted to remove the heart from the engine for further analysis. As they approached with specialized equipment, witnesses reported that the heart's beating increased dramatically, almost as if it was responding to their presence. When a technician finally touched it with a sterile instrument, something unprecedented happened. All electronic systems on the aircraft suddenly activated, despite the plane being completely powered down and disconnected from external power sources. Cockpit voice recorders captured what happened next. Although the recording is heavily distorted, multiple audio analysts have confirmed that a voice, identified with 87% certainty as Captain Mercer's, can be heard whispering through the cockpit speakers, "Don't take me out. I've become part of it now. We're flying together forever." The technician who was attempting to remove the heart suffered third-degree electrical burns on both hands. The aircraft systems shut down immediately afterward, and the heart's beating reportedly stopped for exactly 3 minutes before resuming at precisely the same rhythm as before. Following this incident, the airline and aviation authorities made the unprecedented decision to seal the engine completely and remove the entire assembly from the aircraft. The engine was transported to a secure research facility under military escort. What exactly happened to it afterward remains unclear, though certain classified documents suggest that the heart continued to beat for at least 72 hours after removal, despite having no blood supply or oxygen source. The engine itself presented another anomaly. Metallurgical tests revealed that the titanium alloys in direct contact with the heart tissue had undergone molecular changes. The metal had developed a cellular-like structure at the microscopic level that bore similarities to human tissue. This transformation extended approximately 3 centimeters from each point of contact with the heart, creating what one researcher described as a biomechanical hybrid zone that defied current scientific understanding. While the engine was under examination, investigators continued to search for Captain Mercer. Security footage from Sydney Airport was scrutinized frame by frame. What they discovered only deepened the mystery. In the last footage showing Mercer, as he approached the crew exit, there's a barely perceptible moment, just 2 frames in the digital recording, where his image seems to blur and elongate, as if being pulled towards something off camera. In the next frame, he's simply gone. "We initially suspected video tampering," said digital forensic specialist Alex Novak, but multiple authentication tests confirm the footage is genuine.
Whatever happened to Captain Mercer occurred too quickly for the 30 frames per second camera to properly capture. While the investigation was ongoing, strange occurrences began to plague the Sydney maintenance facility where the aircraft was housed. Workers reported hearing the sound of a heartbeat echoing throughout the hangar at night, even though the engine containing the heart had been removed. Electronic equipment frequently malfunctioned, with diagnostic computers showing impossible readings, like negative fuel levels or altitude measurements while the aircraft was stationary. Most disturbing were the reports from night shift workers who claimed to see a shadowy figure moving inside the cockpit during the early morning hours. Security teams investigated multiple times, but found the aircraft securely locked with no signs of entry. On 3 separate occasions, guards reported that all of the aircraft's exterior lights activated simultaneously at exactly 3:43 a.m., matching Mercer's age at the time of his disappearance. As the case gained attention within aviation circles, individuals with similar experiences began to come forward. A maintenance engineer from a different airline described finding what appeared to be living tissue growing along the wiring harnesses of a 20-year-old Airbus that had been involved in a fatal accident early in its service life. The tissue had been discovered during a routine inspection and was quickly removed and destroyed by airline management before any formal investigation could take place. They told us it was just a fungal growth, the engineer stated, but I've never seen fungi with distinct arterial structures pulsing with red fluid. A retired air traffic controller from Chicago O'Hare International Airport shared an account from 1989 of an aircraft that continued to transmit crew communications for 17 minutes after both pilots had been confirmed dead in a catastrophic cockpit decompression event. The communications reportedly included technical discussions about aircraft systems that seemed to be coming from the deceased captain. These accounts, while impossible to verify independently, suggest that the Mercer case might not be entirely unprecedented. Dr. Howard Klein, an aviation psychiatrist who specializes in the psychological impact of aircraft incidents on crew members, has proposed a theory that, while outlandish, addresses some of the phenomena observed. We know very little about consciousness and its relationship to physical matter, Dr. Klein explained. There are documented cases throughout history of human consciousness seemingly transferring to inanimate objects under extreme stress or trauma. What if Captain Mercer, for reasons we may never understand, experienced some kind of consciousness transfer into the aircraft itself? This would explain why no body was ever found, only the heart, traditionally viewed as the seat of the soul in many cultures. It might also explain the aircraft's seemingly impossible behavior and the continued manifestations experienced by maintenance crews. Pilots often speak of their aircraft as living entities, Dr. Klein continued. They form deep bonds with these machines, spending thousands of hours intimately connected to every vibration, sound, and movement. Is it really so far-fetched to imagine that in certain extreme circumstances, that connection might transcend our conventional understanding of the boundary between human and machine? The theory gained unexpected support from an unlikely source, Sarah Chen, Mercer's co-pilot on his final flight. After initially cooperating with investigators, Chen had taken an extended leave of absence and refused further interviews. 6 months after Mercer's disappearance, however, she reached out to Dr. Klein directly. In a recorded session that was later leaked to aviation journalists, Chen described something she had initially been too frightened to share. During their final approach to Sydney, just before Mercer left the cockpit to check something in the cabin, he had made an unusual statement. He turned to me with this strange look in his eyes, Chen recounted. He said, "I can hear the plane thinking, Sarah. Not just the systems or the warnings or the usual sounds. It's thinking. It wants something from me." I laughed it off as fatigue. We'd been flying for almost 9 hours at that point. But when he came back, he was different, calmer, like he'd made some kind of decision. Chen also revealed that in the weeks following the incident, she began experiencing vivid dreams in which she was flying the aircraft with Mercer beside her, except that in the dreams, Mercer's chest was open, exposing a cavity where his heart should have been. In these dreams, he would repeatedly tell her, "The heart goes to the engine." That's where it belongs. That's where I belong. After her third such dream, Chen visited the maintenance hangar where the aircraft was being kept, despite having no authorization to do so. She claimed that as soon as she entered the cockpit, all of the instruments illuminated, and she felt an overwhelming sense that Mercer was present. "I sat in the captain's seat and placed my hands on the controls," she said. "The stick was warm, body temperature warm, even though the aircraft had been powered down for days. And I swear I could feel it pulsing, like a heartbeat was traveling through the control column." Official explanations from airline and aviation authorities have ranged from the plausible to the absurd. Initial statements suggested a unique form of engine contamination combined with stress-induced mass hallucination among the maintenance crew. Later, investigators proposed that Captain Mercer might have been involved in unauthorized experimental biological modifications to the aircraft, a theory that his family and colleagues vehemently reject. Dr. Akira Tanaka, a biophysicist consulted by the FAA, suggested that extreme electromagnetic fields generated by aircraft systems might, under very specific and rare conditions, alter human tissue at the cellular level. "We know that strong electromagnetic fields can influence biological processes," Dr. Tanaka stated. "Perhaps what we're seeing is an unprecedented interaction between human tissue and aircraft systems that created a type of biomechanical hybrid." This theory, while still far-fetched, at least attempted to provide a scientific framework for the phenomena observed. However, it failed to explain Mercer's disappearance or how his heart could have ended up inside a sealed engine compartment. Perhaps most telling is what happened to the three mechanics who made the initial discovery. Marcus Reeves resigned from his position immediately afterward and reportedly moved to a remote area of New Zealand where he lives off the grid. The second mechanic was admitted to a psychiatric facility 2 weeks later, where he remains to this day, reportedly drawing the same image repeatedly, a human heart with wires and metal components growing from it. The third mechanic, the Catholic who had begun praying, disappeared under circumstances disturbingly similar to Captain Mercer's just 1 month after the incident. Security cameras at his apartment complex show him entering his home, but there is no footage of him ever leaving. His car remained in the parking garage, and his passport was found in his apartment. Like Mercer, he had seemingly vanished without a trace. His heart has never been found. The airline made the controversial decision to return the aircraft to service after the compromised engine was replaced and extensive testing was conducted on all systems. This decision was met with resistance from many industry insiders. "You don't just find a beating heart in an engine and then send that plane back into the sky a few weeks later," said one anonymous airline executive. "Something else is happening here." Indeed, flight crews assigned to the aircraft have reported unusual occurrences. Pilots describe inexplicable fluctuations in engine performance, particularly in engine number 4, the replacement for the one that contained the heart. Flight attendants have reported hearing what sounds like a heartbeat coming through the public address system during night flights. Most concerning are the passenger reports of seeing a male figure in a pilot's uniform walking through the cabin during periods of turbulence, only to disappear when approached. The airline has implemented a peculiar policy. All pilots must now verbally address the aircraft by name before starting the engines. According to internal memos leaked to aviation forums, this acknowledgement protocol has resulted in fewer anomalies. Maintenance crews have also reported that mechanical issues are resolved more quickly when technicians speak respectfully to the aircraft during repairs. "It sounds crazy until you've worked on that plane," said one mechanic who requested anonymity, "but trust me, it knows when you're there. It can feel you touching it." The mystery deepened 6 months after the initial discovery when air traffic controllers in Hong Kong reported something inexplicable. The aircraft, operating as Flight 843 from Melbourne to Hong Kong, disappeared from radar for exactly 6 minutes and 7 seconds, the same as Captain Mercer's birth date, June 7th. When it reappeared, it had somehow traveled 117 nautical miles instantaneously, far beyond the physical capabilities of any known aircraft. When questioned, both pilots stated that nothing unusual had occurred and their flight data showed no irregularities.
However, every timepiece on board, from the cockpit chronometers to passengers' watches and phones, had stopped for precisely those 6 minutes and 7 seconds. The incident was officially attributed to a radar malfunction, but insiders at the Hong Kong Civil Aviation Department confirmed that multiple radar systems from different facilities all recorded the same anomaly. Furthermore, satellite tracking data obtained from a commercial aviation monitoring service showed the same gap in the aircraft's journey. Equally disturbing was the fuel consumption recorded for that flight. Despite traveling the standard route distance of approximately 5,000 nautical miles, the aircraft arrived with fuel levels indicating it had flown only 4,883 nautical miles, a discrepancy that suggests the aircraft had somehow skipped a portion of its journey. The pilots who operated the flight were subjected to extensive psychological evaluation afterward. Both were found to be in excellent mental health with no signs of delusion or psychological distress. However, brain scans revealed unusual activity in the temporal lobes of both pilots, the region associated with perception of time. When questioned about this, the airline's medical director refused to comment, citing privacy concerns. Captain Mercer's family initially demanded answers and transparency from the airline and aviation authorities. His wife, Elena Mercer, gave numerous interviews in the weeks following his disappearance, insisting that her husband had not been acting strangely before his final flight and had no history of mental health issues. Adrian loved flying, she stated in one emotional interview. He often talked about feeling a special connection with his aircraft. He said it was like they understood each other, but he would never have done anything to endanger himself or others. Something happened to him, something they're not telling us. Strangely, Elena's public campaign for answers abruptly ceased 3 months after her husband's disappearance. She declined all further interviews and withdrew a wrongful death lawsuit she had filed against the airline. Sources close to the family reported a dramatic change in her demeanor after she was granted special permission to visit the aircraft in the maintenance hangar. What exactly transpired during that visit remains unknown, but security footage shows Elena entering the cockpit alone and remaining there for 43 minutes, matching her husband's age. When she emerged, witnesses described her as looking eerily peaceful and somehow different. Most remarkably, Elena has now become a regular passenger on the aircraft, booking tickets on its routes whenever possible. Flight attendants report that she often sits quietly by herself near engine number 4, occasionally placing her hand against the interior wall during cruise, closing her eyes and smiling, as if feeling a familiar presence through the cold metal skin of the fuselage. When asked about this behavior by a concerned flight attendant, Elena reportedly answered, "He's still in there, flying. This is the only way I can be with him now." Perhaps the most compelling evidence that something truly extraordinary has occurred comes from the aircraft's performance data since the incident. Despite all the unsettling occurrences, the aircraft has maintained a perfect safety record. Its fuel efficiency has improved by 11%, beyond what should be technically possible for that model. It has never once been delayed due to mechanical issues, and it has successfully navigated through severe weather conditions that forced other aircraft to divert. During one particularly violent thunderstorm over the Pacific Ocean, the aircraft reportedly found a path through the storm cells that didn't appear on weather radar. The captain later reported that the navigation system had suggested an unusual route that somehow threaded between massive storm formations, providing a smoother ride than should have been possible under the conditions. The aircraft has also demonstrated an uncanny ability to predict mechanical issues before they occur. On 3 separate occasions, cockpit warnings have alerted crews to potential component failures that diagnostic systems shouldn't have been able to detect at such early stages. In each case, subsequent inspection confirmed that the components were indeed beginning to fail, though the degradation was so minimal that standard diagnostics would have missed it. It's almost as if the aircraft is being protected or guided by someone with intimate knowledge of flying and an intuitive understanding of the machine itself. Aviation safety expert Thomas Reynolds, who has studied the case extensively, despite official discouragement, perhaps summarized it best.
In over 40 years of investigating aircraft incidents, I've come to believe that there are some things in aviation we aren't meant to understand. The relationship between man and machine sometimes transcends our conventional understanding of physics and biology. Whatever happened to Captain Mercer and that aircraft crossed into territory beyond our current scientific framework. The case officially remains open, but no significant progress has been reported in months. Meanwhile, every day at airports around the world, passengers continue to board November 647 Whiskey Tango, never knowing that somewhere within its massive frame, a human heart might still be beating in perfect rhythm with the engines. A pilot who became one with his aircraft in the most literal and terrifying way possible. The heart of Captain Adrian Mercer, it seems, has found its true home, not in his chest, but within the mechanical heart of the aircraft he loved. Most recently, a night shift cleaner at Singapore Changi Airport reported seeing Captain Mercer boarding the aircraft at 2 a.m., long after all passengers and crew had disembarked. Security footage showed no such event, but the cleaner insists that the captain nodded to him before placing his hand on the fuselage and seemingly melting into the metal itself. He looked happy, the cleaner stated, like a man returning home after a long journey. The airline continues to operate the aircraft on its busiest routes. Passengers board it every day, blissfully unaware of its macabre history or the possibility that their pilot might not be entirely confined to the cockpit. Maintenance technicians still report hearing a faint heartbeat when working near engine number 4, particularly during the quiet hours of the night. Perhaps most unsettling is a recent development. 3 other commercial aircraft of similar age and type have begun exhibiting unusual behaviors reminiscent of Mercer's plane. In each case, the pilots had previously flown November 647 Whiskey Tango as relief captains. All 3 have reported hearing what they describe as whispered conversations coming through their headsets during cruise, despite no one transmitting on the selected frequencies. One of these pilots, Captain James Levine, requested a transfer after experiencing what he described as dreams of mechanical integration, in which he saw himself becoming one with his aircraft. His request was denied. 3 weeks later, following a routine flight from Tokyo to Seattle, Levine disappeared from his hotel room. His uniform was found neatly folded on his bed, but his body was never located. During the next scheduled maintenance check of his aircraft, technicians reported finding unusual tissue-like growth along the flight control cables leading to the cockpit. Samples were taken for analysis, but the results were immediately classified. The aircraft returned to service within 24 hours, and no official mention of the tissue was ever made in maintenance logs. Is it possible that whatever happened to Adrian Mercer is spreading? Could his transformation represent not an isolated incident, but the beginning of a new form of existence, a symbiosis between human consciousness and machine that transcends our understanding of life and death? Or is it something more sinister? An infection of technology by human consciousness, spreading from aircraft to aircraft through the pilots who form connections with them. These questions remain unanswered as November 647 Whiskey Tango continues to cross the skies carrying hundreds of passengers who trust their lives to a plane that might be more than just a machine. A plane with a human heart still beating inside its metal body, guided by the consciousness of a pilot who loved flying so much that he found a way to continue long after his physical form vanished. What would you do if you were assigned to fly on this aircraft? Would you board knowing what might be keeping it aloft? Do you believe this represents a miracle of human-machine integration or the beginning of something far more terrifying? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more investigations into aviation anomalies you won't hear about anywhere else.